to spend in your favourite supermarket, and a festively themed GB News goodie bag, and we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Miriam Cates and you're watching GB News. Coming up in the next hour, 700 police officers, 11 arrests and shouts of death to the IDF. But major clashes were largely avoided at that football match between Aston Villa and Maccabi Tel Aviv last night. This was, of course, after Israeli fans were banned from travelling to Birmingham for the match. Was this the right decision for public safety or a sign of an increasingly divided city? And speculation about tax rises at this month's budget continue, with the Chancellor Rachel Reeves now expected to break Labour's manifesto promise not to raise the basic rate of tax. Is this a necessary move to stabilise the nation's finances or another attack on economic growth? And a migrant sex offender who was mistakenly released from prison has been rearrested after a 9-day police manhunt. But why has there been a 128% rise in accidental releases in the past year? And after bad weather halted small boat channel crossings for nearly 2 weeks, milder conditions see hundreds of migrants arrive on Britain's shores today. Is it any wonder that a new poll has found that fewer than half of Brits feel a sense of national pride? And also, we'll be going live to Washington to get the latest from GB News presenter Ben Leo on Donald Trump's meeting with the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, which is currently in play. And joining me tonight, my panel, the co-founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller, and journalist and former political advisor, Joe Phillips. Well, let's start by crossing live to Washington, where President Donald Trump is meeting the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban.
Should have been a one-week war. I don't know why it's taken. This is 4 years. Should have been 1 week. Should have been over with, but it would have never started. Should have never started. And I would have solved the problem without giving up anything. Ukraine would have remained as is. So there were tremendous mistakes long before I got there. I inherited that mess, and we're getting it solved, along with the 8 wars that we've already ended.
Mr. President.
What is America's interest cultivating better relations with the EU leader or non?
I think I can do both. I mean, there's no reason why I can't. I get along well with the European nations.
You are still a member of the European Union, so it's easy.
Yeah, and by the way, he's a member in good standing, I guess, although they penalize him every once in a while. But he's a member in good standing with the European Union, so he's a member. He's a part of it. But I get along great with him, and I get along very well with them. I agree with him on immigration much more than I agree with them, but I agree with, a lot of the things in Europe he also agrees with. But he had a difference, I would say, primarily on immigration more than anything else. And I happen to think he was right, because their whole fabric has changed. I mean, you go to some of the countries, they're unrecognizable now because of what they've done. And Hungary is very recognizable. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. Will there be a peace summit in Budapest still this year? What do you think?
You mean a meeting with President Putin?
Yes.
You mean in Hungary? Well, I'd like to keep it in Hungary, in Budapest. That meeting, it turned out I didn't want to do that meeting because I didn't think anything was going to be happening of significance. But if we have it, I'd like to do it in Budapest. Yeah, it'd be good.
Mr. President, you said many times to support Viktor Orban. Why is it important to win the next election, for example, for the United States, Hungary, and also Europe? Why is it important?
Well, I don't know his opponent. I don't know if he has an opponent yet. At some point he will, I guess. You know, we always have opponents,
always.
right? Not much of an opponent. But I'll be supportive of him. He's done a fantastic job. We've had a great relationship. The United States, look, we had a country that had no leader. It had an auto pen, illegal auto pen, totally illegal. And that's coming out stronger and stronger. But we had no leader in the United States. I mean, Hungary, as an example, had no relationship with the United States, even though we do, you know, billions of dollars in trade with Hungary. Yeah. Hungary's a big country economically. We do, you know, billions of dollars in trade with Hungary. Why would they give that up? And they gave up so much else. Look, they gave up everything. This country was poorly run. I think if I didn't win the election, we might not have a country, if you want to know the truth, not a recognizable country. But our relationship was immediately good as soon as I won the election because Victor's one of the people that's highly respected, and we had a great relationship with Hungary. We do again. That was an easy one. Yeah.
Do you and Prime Minister Orban agree on ways to put pressure on President Putin to come to the negotiating table to end the war in Ukraine?
I think we agree that the war is going to end. Sometimes people have to fight it out a little bit longer, but I think we agree that the war is going to end in the not-too-distant future. Do you want to talk about that, Victor?
I have some ideas, and I will present it to the President, how to stop it.
Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. President, since you brought up the Walmart Thanksgiving meal, and it is cheaper, but it also contains less, as a
well, I haven't heard that. You're telling me. Who are you with? Who are you with?
I'm with NBC News, sir.
Fake news. NBC. You're fake news. What a NBC's gone down the tubes along with most of the rest of them.
If I ask, why do you think there's such a disconnect between the economy that you're describing day to day and the way many Americans say are feeling and they're concerned about?
Well, they feel better about our country right now, other than the shutdown, obviously, which is caused by the Democrats, could be ended by the Democrats in 2 minutes. They feel much better. We have more jobs. We just set a record on jobs. You do know that. We have more investment in our country than any country in history. We're over $18 trillion as of this moment, and we're going to be maybe at 20 or 21 trillion by the time I finish up my first year. And there's been no country, China, no country in the world that's done anywhere even close to that number. Your friend Biden, as an example, in 4 years was less than $1 trillion. We'll be at 21 trillion in 1 year. So there's no country that was even close to that, and our country was a laughingstock all over the world. We have more jobs, we have more potential than any other country, and frankly, we're the hottest country right now. Victor said to me before, we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. Think of it. We'll have $21 trillion invested. We have auto plants pouring back in. We have AI pouring back in. We're leading China in AI by a lot. We're leading everybody in every category. There's no category that we're in second place. So I just heard this yesterday that Walmart said that the Thanksgiving was 25% more expensive under Biden. That's a big, to me, that's a big number because Walmart's respected. I mean, Walmart is Walmart, and, you know, they're giving you prices. So that would mean that the whole series of pricing and costs, you know, the groceries and everything else, it was a con job. It was a con job. Affordability, they call it, was a con job by the Democrats. The Democrats are good at a few things: cheating on elections and conning.
Well, that's the US President Donald Trump. He's hosting the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban at the White House. And we can now speak with GB News presenter Ben Leo to get the latest on that. Ben, good evening or good afternoon where you are. Fascinating meeting there. Viktor Orban, of course, one of the only supporters of Trump in Europe for quite a long time. Can you summarise what they've been saying so far?
Hello, Miriam. Hello, viewers and listeners. Yeah, what an extraordinary meeting. I could sit there for hours listening to that. I think I probably will until it comes to an end. They kicked off the meeting, first of all, by prioritising why Viktor Orban is there today. And primarily, it's to discuss the oil and gas pipelines between Hungary and Russia. President Trump, a good friend of Viktor Orban, but he's got one slight headache, which is the fact that Hungary keeps buying gas from Russia. There's a pipeline coming from Ukraine. There's a second pipeline that comes from Croatia, which Viktor Orban was explaining there is a smaller pipeline, but it's for liquid natural gas and not oil, which comes from Ukraine. So Viktor Orban saying, look, we would like to stop buying oil and gas from Russia at this precise time, but the problem is we are surrounded by countries. There's no ports anywhere. We kind of have to do this for the time being logistically. He said they're going to Croatia to see if they can get some more fuel resources from Croatia. They're in discussions now with the government, but that is the primary reason Orban is in the White House today, because President Trump wants him to stop. He wants all countries to stop buying gas from Russia so they can bring the war to an end. Secondly, though, more entertainingly, there was discussions about Hungary as a nation. Miriam, you'll be interested in these comments. I think maybe you missed them before you came on air. But Viktor Orban was saying Hungary is the only modern Christian country in the entirety of Europe. And he was saying we are surrounded by liberal, globalist, left-wing governments. He said President Trump, the United States administration, is the only other pro-peace administration across the West when it comes to bringing the war in Russia, Ukraine to an end. And President Trump, again, taking the opportunity to absolutely slam Europe. He didn't particularly identify any nations, but you can probably guess, but slam Europe for illegal migration, saying Viktor Orban in Hungary, zero illegal migration, and Orban himself revealing that Hungary is now paying the EU around £1 million a day, €1 million a day on sanctions because they refuse to bow down to the EU bureaucrats and allow illegal migrants in. President Trump saying the rest of Europe has gone to hell with illegal migrants. Their countries won't exist. Europe won't exist, said President Trump, in years to come if they don't get a hold of the illegal migration problem. But a fascinating conversation between the two, a great dialogue between reporters, and it's very clear Hungary, under the power of Viktor Orban and indeed President Trump, they both tackle illegal migration particularly and conserve their countries in a way which I'd argue lots of Brits watching this now would like us to do in the UK, to the absolute, I'd say, disgust of the rest of Europe. Orban himself, again, I stress, said that they are the only modern Christian country in Europe. They are surrounded by left-wing globalists who are pro-illegal migration, pro-migration, and Hungary is the only country in Europe trying to preserve their own borders and indeed their national culture and identity.
Well, Ben Leo, thank you very much for that report. And, of course, you can watch Ben live tonight from 12 o'clock midnight till 2 a.m. on The Late Show live if you want to catch all the latest from what's going on in the US. And do get your views in as well, gbnews.com/your say throughout the programme. Well, let's get the thoughts of our panel very quickly on that. Joe, coming to you first. Orban and Trump, natural allies.
Of course they are.
This is a love-in, isn't it? Ahead of, hopefully, a peace.
It's the sort of thing that I imagine Alan probably knows more about than I do than this, but I think it's the sort of conversation that goes on in gentlemen's urinals around the country. It's blokes doing what blokes do, which is basically showing off and waving things around to prove that they're bigger and more powerful than each other. I mean, Hungary is a really interesting country. It was occupied twice, once by Stalin and then under the Nazis, and I was there not very long ago, actually. And it's something that we have forgotten in this country, that they have lived through, within living memory for some people, the most horrific times. And it is, a successful country. It is, very European in many, many ways. But there is a worry about the closeness of Viktor Orban to Putin, and that is a sort of it's a difficulty within the sort of the broader structure. And of course, Hungary vetoed Ukraine joining
But Alan, what the Orban administration would say is that they're not pro-Russian. In fact, they're very anti-Russian because of the occupation, but also they have issues with Ukraine. There's some pretty dark history with Ukrainian troops, and there are Hungarians in Ukraine that they say are being oppressed. So it's not black and white.
It's not black and white, but what is black and white is this disdain and contempt for people that want to say that it's a Christian nation, or that we uphold borders, or that you have to accept our values, that we're not going to allow lots of illegal migrants, and that we are going to insist that if you come here to this nation, these are the way you do things. And it's the complete opposite to what we've seen around Europe and in Britain, and it's indicative of the issues that we're grappling with in Britain, that the way some want to treat this is to sort of pour contempt and scorn on them as though they may be in the toilets waving things around, or just generally that they're sort of lesser people. But actually, many of the public in Britain are concerned about precisely these issues right now.
Well, thank you both. I would love to discuss Hungary all day. There is an election there coming up. Orban's been in power since 2010, I think. Will this be the last year of his prime ministership? We'll see. Well, coming up, we're going to be looking at the Maccabi Tel Aviv match that went ahead last night, of course, without the fans. Don't go away.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, on GB News, and keeping me Company until 7 o'clock. I've got my panel, Alan Miller and Joe Phillips. Now, hundreds of protesters gathered outside Villa Park last night in Birmingham ahead of the widely anticipated match between Aston Villa and Maccabi Tel Aviv from Israel. Now, the fallout saw 11 people arrested, more than 700 police officers on duty, and lots of concerns over potential disorder. Now, Birmingham police had taken that controversial decision to ban the Maccabi fans from travelling to the match from Israel, claiming that they didn't have the resources to keep Israeli supporters and the public safe. But today, a police spokesperson has said that it was fears of hooliganism among the Maccabi fans themselves that led to that decision. So, I'm asking my panel, should the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans have been banned in the first place? Joe?
I think it would have been helpful if the police had come out and said this in the beginning, that actually it was not about fears of attacks on the Jewish community or Jewish supporters. It was because the Maccabi fans are well known, apparently, or considered to be a risk for travelling and causing trouble. I mean, we have seen, you know, their behaviour in the Netherlands a few years ago. We also saw a derby, an Israel derby, in Tel Aviv not that long ago, having to be abandoned halfway through. So I think the police have been extremely disingenuous in this case. But what I would like to know is who is paying for the extra policing, because Birmingham Council, as we know, is completely broke. Normally it would fall on the football clubs. Well, presumably they wouldn't be able to afford 700 extra police and horses and all the rest of it. So I think there are questions here, and I think the problem is it's one of those things which, had people been upfront and straight in the first place, it wouldn't have turned into this mire of misinformation, nastiness, and, you know, what is true and what isn't true.
Well, before we come to you, Alan, we do have some clips of those, that hooliganism, if you like, that's caused by the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. They certainly have not been perfectly behaved football fans in the past. But, Alan, the problem here is whether or not it's true that the police banned them for their own behaviour. The perception is that lots of people, lots of local Muslim councillors and politicians called for it to be banned because of their pro-Palestine views. So whatever the truth is, it looks like they've won.
Well, a couple of just points that have been made. So I think it was both the mayor of Amsterdam and the chief of police that said that the Maccabi fans were being hunted down and attacked in the streets. It's also the case that if you look at that particular derby, it was also reported that Hapoel were the ones setting off the fireworks and the police intervened very quickly. If you look at their actual record across Europe, there aren't any incidents. But I think the key question here is the question that we were just talking about before, which is what you've got is a situation where there's a safety advisory group, one of which of the people on there is Mr. Ayub Jarjar, who was in Hezbollah, apparently, and you've got the Birmingham Council and West Midlands Police. Now, under the auspices of safety, what we're told is that they've got to ban a football team, and that means like anyone in Britain who supports that football team as well, from going to a stadium. And yet, the idea that and basically it's certain types of people. And I think if you look at the videos in the run-up to it and the discussions about don't bring a gun, bring a baseball bat, lots of chanting, not really many British flags, that it looks like what this is a very particular political position that both Birmingham Council, people like Ayub Khan, the MP, who set up a petition to weaponise this discussion. There are also posters up that were very particular that we've seen there. And I'm very concerned that the ones that did go there to actually wanted to see the game but couldn't, they were put in a pen, a cage, whereas what then happened was...
Well, it was a basketball court, but they said it felt like...
It was a basketball court, it was a cage, they called it... But the question does become, are we going to have no-go areas in Britain and in cities? Schools were locked down, we haven't seen that since lockdown, and there was a real sense of fear and concern. There weren't any families there. You know, normally attendances are around 40,000 or that kind of thing in the 20,000s. We see a situation as well where Aston Villa fans obviously didn't agree with those protests. You could see that in the videos. And we also saw that even though in the end there were 7 times the amount of police that are normally somewhere, right? So over 700 police. And you just think, really, they should have actually had the game with the fans and everything. And that would that would have been a way to actually have handled it. And there is concerns in Britain that this was particularly about the Jewish community, and we've seen in this discussion over the last 2 years of some protests and some of their concerns. And you can have views about the international situation, but we live in Britain, and the question about are we going to allow no-go zones because people set up petitions and boycott and stop people from coming, or are we going to have a free and open society?
I mean, Joe, that is the problem, isn't it? At the end of the day, this was football. It shouldn't have been political.
No, you're absolutely right, and it shouldn't. And we can say, hand on heart, Alan and I both know, and you do as well, British football fans have behaved appallingly abroad, and people have been banned.
But there is a difference between that kind of hooliganism and this coordinated attempt to basically cancel Israel and prevent Israel from taking part.
But that's why I say,
sport.
if the decision was taken, and safety advisory groups are only advisory, they're not statutory, but they advise, and councils would be foolish usually to ignore the advice of the police and other emergency services, because, if something goes wrong, it'll be on their head. But it would have been helpful if at the very beginning the police had said, we are doing this because, and Maccabi Tel Aviv, who had already decided that they were not going to take up their allocation of tickets, it might have actually diffused things. And, Alan is right. Yes, it becomes weaponised, but it's also weaponised by people like ghastly Tommy Robinson and his ilk, who threatened to turn up, and has been parading himself around
At the end
Israel.
of the day, it is a fearful sight to see those kind of protests shouting death to the IDF, all those kind of things, to protest against a football match in Britain. I mean, it does speak to our incredible...
And we see it's a bit similar to the Salman Rushdie situation, where you have a situation where you're not allowed to say certain things, but you are allowed to say others. And the elevation of offence of some people, we get constant discussions that we're going to have an Islamophobia rule. You have to dance around questions of radical jihadism. We've seen all the things that have happened in the last few months here. You're never allowed to mention the T words. You're mentioning a different T word, but I think genuinely the public are very concerned by this situation, and there's something that we have to address, right? That we've got radicals in positions of authority and having charities and others that are saying we're not going to allow certain people to come into this area. And I think that what people have been concerned about are discussions around racism, people are being racist. Actually, it seems to me that what we actually saw was very clear racism against a certain group of people. And I think we need to have a big debate in Britain about being open, about addressing questions of multiculturalism versus integration, and what our values in Britain are, and how we actually address them. Because what it seems to me was yesterday reflected a very dark moment where certain groups of people were saying, this is our area.
On both sides,
Certain groups of people were saying, this is our area. There was a capitulation by West Midlands Police. Birmingham Council were actually promoting it, and the MP there, and he's very clear about his views.
Joe, very, very quick final word.
It's on both sides. When you get people like Tommy Robinson and his ilk who are out to cause trouble and threaten...
He wasn't there, and he was nothing to do with him. I don't know why you're talking about
Do
him.
get in touch with your views. We're going to move on now. Coming up, a migrant sex offender mistakenly freed from prison is back behind bars after a 9-day manhunt. But why have accidental prison releases soared by 128% in the last year?
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
An unsettled weekend to come for central parts of the Med, although Spain and Portugal will get away with plenty of sunshine. It's going to be breezy through the Canary Islands as well as Madeira, a few showers here. Less breezy for Portugal and much of Spain, but we continue to see a strong wind through eastern parts of Spain, wrapped around a low that's going to bring some heavy rain to the Balearics, and then as that moves east, it's going to bring further wet weather to Italy as well as Greece during Sunday and into the start of next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Rain will continue its journey eastwards overnight tonight. A little bit colder this evening in the west, but mist and fog likely for many rural areas. We've got low pressure in charge, swinging in frontal areas, which will bring some rain through the next couple of days, particularly through this evening across central areas. After a fairly bright day, it will turn much cloudier this evening across the north and east, with some drizzly rain likely overnight. Now, it'll clear up across western areas. That could allow some mist and fog to develop, but it will also allow the temperatures to fall away a little bit lower than they have done lately, down into the single figures, particularly across the far southwest of England, Wales and parts of Northern Ireland as well. Now, where the rain is still lingering tomorrow morning across northern areas of Scotland in particular, it will be a bit of a murky start to the day, so a bit of a different feel tomorrow morning compared to today. Some mist and fog around, particularly over the hills and across coastal areas too. Further south across parts of northern England, there will be some brighter spells, but still some mist and fog first thing, and it's across the south and west parts of Wales as well, but we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing on Saturday. That's not to say there won't be sunshine elsewhere throughout the weekend. Saturday is actually looking fairly dry and bright once that cloud does lift up after first thing. So plenty of sunshine to come. The cloud will come and go, but it will still feel fairly pleasant out there as the winds are relatively light, particularly across eastern areas of the country. So temperatures climbing to around 13, 14 or 15 degrees, a little bit cooler than it has been lately, but still fairly mild for the time of year. And that could allow, with clear skies, temperatures to fall away to allow a grass frost across the east on Sunday morning. But elsewhere, the next batch of wet weather across the west will arrive through Sunday, bringing some potentially quite spells of quite heavy rain. And that will likely become a little bit more widespread through Monday and Tuesday. And although there's a risk of frost overnight for some areas, it's staying mild by day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for helping us reach 8 million followers across social media. Thank you for making us a part of your daily life.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. An accident affects the A483 between Welshpool and Llanymynech, with diversions in place. In Cheshire East, the M56 eastbound entry slip at Junction 7 is closed due to a collision. In Staffordshire, there is congestion on the A38 northbound between Burton-upon-Trent South and Junction A5 132. The A45 eastbound in Northamptonshire is blocked by a collision. The M20 westbound exit slip at Junction 10A in Kent is partially closed following a police incident. And on the trains, disruption affects services between Birmingham and Nuneaton or Tamworth on cross-country. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, and today the Met Police have confirmed that the migrant sex offender who was mistakenly released, Brahim Kadur Sharif, has now been re-arrested.
If anything happen, yo, if anything happen, protection.
Actual footage of the rearrest, and it comes as the Justice Secretary David Lammy is under fire and admits there's a mountain to climb as accidental prison releases hit a record high this year. In the last year, 90 violent or sex offenders were freed by mistake, which is 8 times more than last year when it was 11. After 2 months in the role, we're asking, is it time for Lammy to resign? Let's start with you, Alan. David Lammy did have a terrible appearance at the dispatch box on Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday, but leaving aside his performance, what is causing this massive rise in the number of prisoners wrongly released?
It's astonishing, Miriam. I think we've got a number of problems here. On the one hand, we've got a situation where the prison service is massively low morale, there's incompetence, there's kind of issues about people just being able to deal with day-to-day activities. I think we've seen the same thing in the Home Office. We've got our institutions, we're not getting things done properly and efficiently. And then I think we got a situation that, just to lead on from that, this question of divided Britain, I mean, what it really means, I think on the one hand, the public is very concerned. The sense that things are out of control, the sense that our institutions are not working properly, that we've got a situation that criminals are on the loose, that more are being released, that also that people are coming in daily and we're not sure who they are. There's also tens of thousands of people on a terror watch list. We've seen in the last few months a number of stabbings and deaths from that, murders basically, and sexual attacks and assaults. And that's on top of all the homegrown issues that we have on a daily basis anyway. And it seems like that we're not able to have an honest conversation without people saying, well, you're this or you're that. I think that the whole point about what's so great about Britain is the majority of people are decent, they believe in tolerance, they believe in liking their neighbours and friends, but they're furious that when they talk about the issues around these things, these concerns, that they're labelled things and they're called smears. And so we've got a number of things we have to address. We have to address the issue with prisons. We have to address the issue with the Home Office. We've got to address the issue with policing. It's astonishing. They're also furious that you can get 6 police or come into your house for a post, or you can get 5 arresting a comedian at the airport. But when there's burglaries and shoplifting or crime or people walking around, they don't know where they are, with knives, they're not getting picked up. They're like, what is going on?
Well, we understand from ITV News that police are actually hunting for 4 more prisoners that were mistakenly released. Joe, do you think this extraordinary rise has got anything to do with the early release scheme that Labour have implemented?
No, I think it is absolutely the chaos in prisons. I mean, there have been over a dozen prison ministers in the same number of years, one of whom was only in post for about 2 weeks. I can't remember his name. And, you know, we've had... He probably can't remember his name either. And, you know, we've had similar number of people. You know, Dominic Raab did it twice. We've got David Lammy, only just in the job, did an appalling performance at Prime Minister's Question Time. But I think, you know, this goes back a long time. Rory Stewart, who will have been a colleague of yours, who was Prisons Minister briefly, he wrote in his fabulous book and pledged in 2018, you know, that he would resign if he couldn't get a grip on the prison thing. And he details in that book, you know, the resistance from civil servants and prison staff, including governors, to do some really basic stuff like, you know, fix the windows so the drones can't fly the drugs in. Yeah. So I think that there are an awful lot of problems. Dame Ann Owers, who did a huge report in 2020, warned then of the number, the overcrowding, and of course what has happened is that sentences have got longer because all politicians want to be seen to be tough on crime. So you build up the numbers in prisons. We've also got the backlog in the court system. So you've got people on remand who perhaps should have been dealt with, sent somewhere else, and so on and so forth. So that, you know, that goes back to COVID. And you've got this, as Alan says, you know, you've got low morale, but you've also got very inexperienced prison officers, and that's a big problem.
And there's been huge turnover in the last few years, and discovered yesterday that actually 20% of prison officers last year, new recruits, were recruited directly from abroad with interviews via Zoom, and it's no longer a kind of well-paid job. It's now almost not much above minimum wage for some. It's not attracting the kind of calibre of people that we need. Well,
and the dangers within being in the prison system are immense, and some of the wings are run by certain groups. Some of the groups we've just been talking about before, as it happens, there's a real recruitment for radicalism within them. There's also the question, you know, and then we're presented with this idea, of course, this silver bullet. The digital ID is going to solve so many of these problems. It's going to help with identification of people. It's going to stop crime. It's going to have an impact on all these things, from the borders and the boats to people coming out. And I think that the public really wants to see this getting addressed and taken stock of. For far too long, we've been told, some people called it the blob, others called it other things, but the institutions dominated by certain ideologies, but not able to tackle the actual issues. We've seen that with Hendon Police Training College. We've seen that with the leadership of the police, not the rank and file. We've seen that with the situation in the prison service. We were looking at building loads of Nightingale hospitals, where there was the discussion at the start of COVID. There are solutions to all problems, right? But what it takes is commitment. It takes political will. You have to win the public to those ideas, and as it happens, I think the public's very amenable to them. The question of law and order, crime and punishment needs to have authority, and there's been a crisis of authority in Britain where people that lead have not really wanted to embrace that and address it. We've had all sorts of ideas about why you can't do things, from health and safety to patronising views about people, and it's time we really got this addressed addressed in Britain. And I think that, you know, the public really wants to see that happen.
Joe, do you think the problem is that we need more, better prisons, better paid staff, but the problem for politicians is you don't get a lot of credit in the ballot box
I was
building prisons.
just about to say, you know, people want houses, they want schools, they want hospitals,
money
they
on the
don't want
NHS,
prisons. And also they want prisons, but not near me.
Yes, exactly.
You know, so you're caught in this thing. I mean, what we need is an efficient justice system. So if you clear the backlog, you deal with people more quickly, you actually put funding back into the totally hollowed out probation service, and then you can deal with early release or, you know, less violent criminals being in the community. You have proper supervision of community orders and alternatives to prison. But, you know, the probation service is on its knees. And it's years and years and years of lack of funding, ignoring it, hoping it will go away. But as you say, Miriam, you know, there ain't many votes.
No, it's spending more money on prisons.
No, exactly.
But
it is
we
a
are
big
seeing
issue.
the impact of not doing that now. And you know, you were talking earlier about a rise in stabbing, and we've also seen huge rises in shoplifting. All these kind of things that are leading to people feeling very unsafe.
Yeah, there are ways to resolve things, right? It's about political will. We've got to space, we've done all sorts of things. So you can get dynamic wealth creation and innovation. You can allow zombie companies to fail. You can have an efficient, innovative economy. At the moment, people are leaving millionaires and wealthy people because they don't want the extra taxes that keep being tax raids and all the national insurance, and it's endless, and pensioners. It seems like everyone's getting taxed. And yet the execution and the efficiency of our institutions across the board, from the Home Office, Ministry of Justice, what we've got seeing in the NHS, this all needs to be addressed. We need a DOGE in Britain which really efficiently addresses and assesses our situation and makes it efficient. And we need to be able to assert the idea that the public must come first and engage them in that. When the public are behind you and they believe in that, then you have a true mandate to implement things. They're not in a short-term cycle, but you're honest about the commitment to that over a period of time. And what kind of society do we want? And that's the point we're at now.
Well, you have brilliantly led us on to the next topic. We're going to be talking about tax. We'll come to you first on that, Joe, but we do just need to read this right of reply from David Lammy's office. We inherited a prison system in crisis, and I'm appalled at the rate of releases and an error that this is causing. I'm determined to grip this problem. That's why I've ordered new tough release checks, commissioned an independent investigation into systemic failures, and begun overhauling archaic paper-based systems still used in some prisons. So let's get back to that question of tax, because of course we need tax if we're going to have prisons, and to tax or not to tax is the question facing our Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who's currently preparing for that budget statement on the 26th of November. It does seem increasingly likely that she will raise the basic rates of tax, which of course would go against a key Labour manifesto commitment. So let's take a look at why Britain's finances are in such a parlous state. Well, the UK has not had a balanced budget since 2001. So this chart shows basically how much more into debt we're getting each year, and you can see that since 2001, governments have spent more money than they've taken in tax, adding to the national debt each year. And so this next chart shows how that debt has grown and grown and grown. Now we're at £2.5 trillion of debt. Just the interest alone is costing us more than £100 billion a year, more than we spend on defence or police or schools. And there's no end in sight, because working age benefits are set to increase. And this chart shows how old age spending is forecast to increase, potentially reaching 25% of all national spending by the 2070s. A pretty gloomy outlook, panel. I mean, something has to give, Joe. What's she going to do?
Well, she's got to break the manifesto promises. And, you know, I speak as somebody who saw what happened to the Liberal Democrats after they had to abandon tuition fees. But, you know, they came back after that. It was a stupid promise to make, actually, because anybody could have seen that there were going to be problems, because we knew the state of public services. So you knew you'd have to find the money from somewhere. This government were elected on a huge majority, albeit very shallow. You have to be bold, you have to be brave, you have to do unpopular things. And she's tinkered around the edges, making some terrible mistakes with, you know, scrapping the winter fuel allowance, which actually just annoyed people, upset people, surprised people. And, you know, the inheritance tax on farms, you know, with the complete lack of understanding that £1 million is not a lot of money when you're looking at a farm and its equipment and its machinery, etc., etc. You know, then we've had a sort of bit fanning around the edges on employers, national insurance. Well, that's killed the jobs market. So actually, what she needs to do on the 26th of November is go, right, we're going to put up tax by whatever it is, tuppence or something, but we're going to cut national insurance so that people on sort of basic average wage won't see a difference. We're going to stop the triple lock. Pensioners will be up in arms. Well, tough. You know what? They've had it, you know, really, really good for an awfully long time. And if you want to sweeten that pill, you say, but we're going to use that money to pay for social care, because this government's never mentioned social care. And you've got to cut the benefits bill, which they, you know, they shied away from because they'd got a rebellion from their backbenchers.
Isn't the problem, Alan, that she has to raise tax because she can't cut the benefits bill because her backbenchers won't let her?
Well, she had a backbench revolt. I mean, one of the things here is what we're really talking about is we need a new Festival of Britain where we have proper investment in infrastructure, we have risk-taking, and we have the belief and the conviction to slash benefits. We've got 5 million people on benefits. We've got to get people working, but they need to be paid properly, and companies need to make profits. I think it's astonishing. Not only does she do U-turn, she's going to break her pledge and pledges. We've seen that already, the pledge that Labour made to farmers beforehand. But then in addition to that, they also do things that are not in their manifesto, like saying we're going to impose digital ID. Somehow that's going to resolve all these issues. The question that everyone's got is how do we make Britain grow again? How do we make wealth creation happen? And that's going to take commitment, and it's going to take investment, risk, infrastructure development. We've got a situation, and it's going to take control of borders. It's going to take honest discussion with the NHS, how to stop the sclerotic bureaucracy, look at the European model a bit more, the mixed situation, and efficiency. And these are all terms that we don't like talking about anymore. People call people's names. But we've got to get a grip of it. We could have a massive house building campaign in infrastructure. We've got loads of local family builders as well. You know, at the moment it's the big five, the oligopoly. We could have a situation where there's a renaissance in Britain with everything from tech to biomedicine to electrification, a range of different issues, right? Tidal wave, nuclear, but that takes an all-round approach that's going to embrace the public and say this is how we're going to do it. What we do with our farmers and agriculture, what we do with the economy. And these guys only know tax raids, they only know assaults. The fact they're called Labour is an insult to labouring people. And as it happens, well, the only one thing I will say is since the 70s, Britain's growth has been sluggish, but we're in dire straits now. There is a way to address it because we make the world every day, but we're going to have to be very insistent on it.
But some of this should have been done before Brexit. You know, all these promises. People talk about politicians breaking manifesto promises. Nobody is going, oh, hang on a minute, what about the promise that was on the side of all the buses about what we were going to get when we left Europe? Nobody mentions those. So actually, the promises, the manifestos actually don't really matter.
The problem is, just like spending money on prisons, achieving a balanced budget doesn't get any votes either.
Exactly.
So
there's the B word coming up again. But on that B word, just to say, we still haven't left properly, have we? We've still got the ECH.
We are not going into Brexit. We only have a few precious minutes left on the show. A spokesman for the Treasury has said that the Chancellor has set out the context for the budget, recognising global and long-term economic challenges. It will continue to build the strong foundations to secure Britain's future and on the priorities of the British people, cutting waiting lists, cutting national debt and cutting the cost of living. Well, coming up, Channel crossings surge once again. More than 1,000 new migrants since yesterday. Is it any wonder that fewer than half of Brits now feel a sense of national pride? We'll see you soon.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here with GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Yeah, they probably said
Welcome back to Dewbs and Co. We're now at the Dewberry Tavern. It's Friday night. Do join us at home with a drink.
Cheers.
I'm Miriam Cates, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock, I've got Alan Miller and Joe Phillips. Now, lots of Labour MPs were hoping that the boats had been stopped and the gangs had been smashed, but it turns out it was just bad weather that had put off the small boats. And now that we've seen some milder autumn weather, more than 1,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel since yesterday morning, with many now set to be housed across the UK. Also today, a new study by King's College London and Ipsos has found that national pride has plummeted and that society feels more divided than ever. Alan, do you think these two things are related? The fact that the successive governments don't seem to be able to solve this basic problem of protecting our borders, and people feel basically more and more disenfranchised?
I think it's definitely connected. I think that there's a situation where, for a long time, the public's been treated with contempt. It feels like it's not being engaged with, often called names. This goes back a long time, where we've seen all sorts of things, horrible names called about the public. And I think there's genuine concern about what Britain is, what British values are, where we are now. In our education service, we've got a situation where nothing's ever discussed without saying it's been rape and pillage and terrible things historically about heritage. There's the elevation always of other things being brilliant, but not anything in Britain. All of the achievements of the Enlightenment, the great ideals of justice and democracy and freedom and privacy, those things are kind of given scant attention. And then in the context of that, culturally and politically, we've got a situation where things really feel like they're out of control. 600 people coming yesterday on a boat. We've got people being let out of prison. We've got all sorts of crime going on. And yet, the focus often in this two-tier discussion is what people are posting on social media, or certain people are arrested for certain things but not others, and there's a real sense of things being unfair, and that you're called names for flying your own flag, that people are called names for protesting about certain things, or even having conversations and questioning them. And I think the way to overcome any division, to have unity, is to have honest civil debate and discussion, and really thrash out ideas with people. We're fellow citizens, we've got a lot in common, but that means we can have a really robust debate and discussion. The problem is we've seen far too much censorship. We've seen far too much of that, you're not allowed to say that. We've seen a range of those things happen on social media. Now, with the conversation about digital ID as well, people are very concerned that's going to get weaponised.
I'm not sure that censorship is what's... I'm not arguing that censorship has happened, certainly over COVID, but surely the opposite is true. the fact that because people are online all the time, because so many views are out there, and now you have to align yourself with one of them. Isn't it that's increased people's awareness of everybody else's political views? And
I think it is partly that. I mean, it's a really interesting survey for very many reasons, some of which you've touched on. But the thing that struck me most of all is that this desire that people want to go back to how things used to be, and that includes young people. Now, you know, we don't know what that means. Do we, you know, are we going back to the old days of the Hovis advert? Are we going back pre-Brexit? Are we going back pre-COVID? But this sort of sense of nostalgia, which I think is amplified because people feel, as Alan said, they feel disconnected. But I think so many things have failed, and big institutions have failed. You know, the Church of England, the Archbishop of Canterbury being forced to resign, prisons and the policing service, which we were just talking about, governments. Brexit was incredibly divisive. COVID was incredibly divisive. And we haven't had any leadership in this country to try and bring things together. And I think you're absolutely right, Miriam. I think, you know, the free-for-all on social media, which forces people in a way, particularly young people or particularly people who feel unsure of themselves, to pick a tribe. And then you go down that rabbit hole. I think it's really dangerous.
I mean, when I was growing up, Alan, before social media, you had no idea what other people thought about global warming or American politics, whereas now we kind of all have nailed our colours to a mast before we even meet somebody.
Potentially, although the 20th century was dominated by a huge ideological battle between left and right, and you grew up in...
But you talked about in every single conversation.
But I'm not sure that happens now either with most ordinary people. But what happens is that you grow up, some family affiliations, you get a bit more mature, you might get involved in politics or with your work colleagues, and you thrash out debates. We've seen that in Britain over the last few years. We've seen it during Brexit. We've seen people, families, all sorts of people discussing things. We've seen it during the lockdowns and COVID. And I think there are issues with algorithms and re-perpetuating certain tribal outlooks, but actually I think that's a reflection of what's happened in the culture wars of the last 30 years. The elevation of the notions of difference and insularity and atomisation that have been impacting across all of our cultures and networks. And the reason I mentioned digital ID is a really important issue in this conversation here, because the idea that somehow we're going to get some glue that to unite issues and deal with them using a kind of technocratic solution that ends up being able to monitor and regulate and check on people. Now, the thing is, often what's said about the internet is that there's too many terrible things being said. The thing is, we need to do is get to the bottom of them, let the light of reason shine on that and thrash that all out. And in a way, the problem is people aren't getting to discuss enough.
We need to have proper conversations.
And we need something to unite around.
Exactly.
And I think that the immigration has sparked that debate, but what does it mean to be British? The kind of things we used to do together, the institutions we used to have together, aren't there anymore. And even if we solved immigration tomorrow, we would not have that togetherness that we once had. So that's, I think, what we need to think about. It's my show, I'm having the final word. So thank you so much to my panel. We've got Lee Anderson up next. Don't go away. You're watching GB News. Have a fantastic weekend. That's all from Dewbs & Co.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Rain will continue its journey eastwards overnight tonight. A little bit colder this evening in the west, but mist and fog likely for many rural areas. We've got low pressure in charge, swinging in frontal areas, which will bring some rain through the next couple of days, particularly through this evening across central areas. After a fairly bright day, it will turn much cloudier this evening across the north and east, with some drizzly rain likely overnight. Now, it'll clear up across western areas. That could allow some mist and fog to develop, but it will also allow the temperatures to fall away a little bit lower than they have done lately, down into the single figures, particularly across the far southwest of England, Wales and parts of Northern Ireland as well. Now, where the rain is still lingering tomorrow morning across northern areas of Scotland in particular, it will be a bit of a murky start to the day, so a bit of a different feel tomorrow morning compared to today. Some mist and fog around, particularly over the hills and across coastal areas too. Further south across parts of northern England, there will be be some brighter spells, but still some mist and fog first thing. And it's across the south and west parts of Wales as well, but we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing on Saturday. That's not to say there won't be sunshine elsewhere throughout the weekend. Saturday is actually looking fairly dry and bright once that cloud does lift up after first thing. So plenty of sunshine to come. The cloud will come and go, but it will still feel fairly pleasant out there as the winds are relatively light, particularly across eastern areas of the country. So temperatures climbing to around 13, 14 or 15 degrees, a little bit cooler than it has been lately, but still fairly mild for the time of year. And that could allow, with clear skies, temperatures to fall away to allow a grass frost across the east on Sunday morning. But elsewhere, the next batch of wet weather across the west will arrive through Sunday, bringing some potentially quite spells of quite heavy rain. And that will likely become a little bit more widespread through Monday and Tuesday. And although there's a risk of frost overnight for some areas, it's staying mild by day. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the nation, because the truth matters, and so do you.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. A serious collision has closed all lanes on the A56 eastbound slip at Junction 7, with clearance expected from 8:15 to 8:30 p.m. Expect a 20-minute delay on the A38 northbound near Burton-upon-Trent, clearing by 9:15 p.m. In Northamptonshire, the A45 eastbound is shut due to an unspecified incident, with normal conditions projected by 11:15 p.m. On the M4 westbound, delays are around junctions 19 and 20 due to a broken-down vehicle. And on the trains, cross-country services between Birmingham New Street and Nuneaton are disrupted. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
We're giving you the chance to win your entire Christmas this year paid for by us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News.